Hello, viewers. Marianne from Revealing Light Tarot. I'd like to do a channeling this morning of Robin Williams. Some of you, or most of you, all of you would know who Robin Williams is. He's actually been here for a while, on and off. He's been coming in and out. He first presented with a message around spontaneity and generating an energy when you're feeling unmotivated, some of the ways that you can generate energy. The various messages he's been bringing forward this morning is around energy. It's around the brilliance of thought in some people who are able to connect very quickly thoughts, almost like, and I got this image this morning of a young boy running. Now, I don't know where Robin Williams was brought up, but, or even if this image is relating to him, but there is a road and there is a young boy running, and there's also somebody on a veranda calling him back. So I'm not sure what that image means, but he has been pacing. So I'm getting a very, very, I wouldn't say it's, I don't know if it's restless. Yeah, he's telling me it is restless energy. And the ability of his thoughts to get a run on thoughts. So if you've seen some readers, for example, reading, they might read where they just don't stop talking. It's that kind of thing. It's like when he joins in the thoughts inspired thoughts, and then he is able to access a continual stream. And it's a bit like that young boy running. It just goes very, very quickly. Now, this morning I've got someone mowing my lawns in the background, and I wasn't going to do this reading, but I actually was guided to keep going with it, because what Robin Williams is trying to tell me is that we're in the latter part of his life. So there's this youthful energy, and there's this brilliant career that he had, and based on his brilliant capacity to use his mind. But I'm also getting that there was pain, obviously, at the end of his life, and it was like he's saying to me, or he's telling me that this hum, this noise that I've got now distracting me, which continually stops the run on, was what he felt at the end of his life. And that is what he didn't want to live with. So somebody that had lived freely and forcefully, and he didn't when he experienced this run on of thoughts, as I describe it, he didn't necessarily even know where he was going. He just ran, and so he had this ability to end up to gather thoughts together. At the starting point would be 2 or 3 thoughts that would start to resonate, and he would just go, and it would be like a journey and a destination, so that by the time he got to the end of that, it had taken people on a journey as well. It was the speed, it was the alacrity, it was like witnessing an Olympic runner run, because I'm continually getting this vision, or this image of this young boy running. And so he channeled that energy, because it is, and it's not quite ADHD, attention deficit syndrome. It's not quite that, but there are elements of mental health management that Robin Williams also had to contend with. So he had to find an outlet for this energy, this quick energy, this restless energy. You know, even now as I see him, he's pacing. He's got his arms folded and he's pacing. He told me before, if I go ahead with this reading this morning, I would not be sorry. Even though I've got the lawnmower in the background, and it's he's saying it's not going to distract me, but he wanted to illustrate what it was like for him at the end of his life, where he just couldn't continue to do the things that he did. And he was in some pain as a result of that. And he also knew that it was only going to get worse. So it's a bit like dignity in dying. He had a terminal illness that was going to really, he would have ended up almost like, I don't like to use that terminology, but he would have ended up without any capacity at all, let's just put it like that, and reliant on other people, and he didn't want to do that. So while the world was rocked by his self-harm, and the way that he passed, it was absolutely the right thing for him to do. And he's asking me to ask you to think about it in the same way that we have euthanasia, in the same way that we have dignity in dying. He's asking you to think about it in that regard. He's saying that he thought about it over a long period of time. He knew his prognosis. He didn't let on with other people, the people that he loved, because he didn't want to draw them into it or upset them, or that they might stop him. And so he understood that this was the only thing he could do, really, to keep his dignity and take matters into his own hands, take control of the situation, because the illness, for somebody who had that sheer brilliant mental alacrity, for someone to get or suffer from dementia was such a random, out of the blue. It's like a hammer blow, like it was the last thing that he expected. And so there are lessons in there for him. There are lessons in so there's enjoyment in thoughts being out of control. Absolutely there is. There's a freedom in thoughts being out of control. When I say out of control, if you think about the chariot in the tarot, it's like you hang on for the ride because it's going to be fun. But there's also a lesson in there as well, and the lesson is around discipline. But he was always well-intentioned with his humour, always well-intentioned. And I asked him what deck I should be using this morning, and he talked about. I thought about using my 78 Tarot Mythical deck, the new deck that I've got, and I was very drawn to some of those, the artistry in that deck. But he actually said, no, he didn't say. I got the impression that I was to use the Crow Tarot. And he says that some people don't like the Crow Tarot because it can be quite confronting, particularly that death card of the crow picking over the carcass. But he's saying that the humour that he used was actually designed to make people think of things in another way, to actually confront them with something, and in doing so, in making them laugh about that. So he talked about my black jumper this morning, and it's actually making people think of things in another way, in a different way, so that it's taking away their fear. It's taking away their fear. So that's why the dementia diagnosis, the particular dementia that he was diagnosed with, I think it's Lewy bodies, is pretty severe, and that actually did scare him, because that lack of control. But as I said, there's some kind of lesson there in discipline for him in going on the chariot ride without holding on to the reins. So he had a hell of a ride. He had a hell of a ride in his life, is what he wants, what is making me feel. Not making me, he's suggesting, showing me he had a hell of a ride. But did he always go in the right direction? Because he didn't really know where he was heading in terms of when he was in that stream. Did he always go in the right direction? He's saying just a tad more control would have been good. Okay, so why is he coming through here today? Okay, so he's got a big message around spontaneity. He's talking about when you're in that depressed state, which he was at the end of his time here in this incarnation. He's talking about when you're lying on the couch, when you can't get motivated, when the energy is just so heavy, when you stop that run. And he's talking about spontaneity as a way of raising the energy. So it's allowing a glimmer of spontaneity to come in to your thoughts. And it could be, he's saying look up. Instead of looking down, look up, look at something around you. There is inspiration in everything, he's saying, everything. And that's why he could actually talk in the way that he could. He would look at something and it would just start that thought process and off he would run. It could be something as simple as a clock on the wall, tick-tock, tick-tock. It could be a picture, a family scene. I'm just looking around the room now and being drawn to the outside. So for me, my inspiration is in the outside. What would get me up off the couch if I was in that state would be my love of the outdoors, my love of nature. So he's saying look up and start to observe and notice things around you, and that is a way of stimulating your motivation. It's human not to be motivated. It's motivated. It's human to be a little bit down at times. You know, that's life. That's what we have to contend with on this earth. And if you can find some way of inspiring yourself through spontaneity, it can actually just change the shift for you. It can shift the focus for you. It can just generate that little bit of energy that will actually push you forward in some way. So a big message there around spontaneity. There are messages around allowing your thoughts to go right out to wherever, right out as far as they can go. And, there's always a need to stay grounded and be anchored. There's also, on the positive side of things, there's also a message here around free-flowing speech. Okay, so when I opened up for this reading with the lawnmower in the background, I noticed as I was opening up my chakras as part of the preparation I do before every reading, how tight my throat was. And the throat chakra is, of course, the chakra that aligns with communication and the colour of blue. And so when I look at blue, I'm looking right out now at the blue sky, and the blue sky is endless. When I noticed that my throat chakra was constricted, and so part of this running speech that Robin Williams had, or has, because he's still got it where he is now, is that he didn't have any constriction or restriction. So there's two sides of the coin in everything. In a way, his ability to really talk at the speed of light had both a blessing and a curse. Before the dementia diagnosis, there were periods where he was a little bit manic, and he's acknowledging that. And I am getting the image of the chariot there. So great, the ride was fantastic and a brilliant one, but there was always a need for a little bit of discipline. If you're going to go out there to the ethers, just make sure that you're anchored in some way. And that goes toward everything. That goes toward every feeling, emotion, situation, event where you're going beyond yourself. Always, be anchored and be grounded. And there are ways of doing that. He's saying that sometimes we don't even realise that we're not grounded It's not until we start to feel, unwell, or we start to feel a little bit uncomfortable, or we start to want to go home. He's saying, because there's this idea about getting up off the couch. When we're feeling those feelings, or it can often be that we just need to ground ourselves, bring ourselves back a bit, have that little bit of discipline, and we can actually start to look up and start to see things around. So there is a mental health aspect of why he's come through here today. And I do feel, I haven't researched Robin Williams before this channeling. I know him from his career on the TV, and I know his battle with dementia, and I know about his very, very sad passing. But he doesn't want people to be sad. He wants to reframe it, and that's another reason that he's here. He wants to reframe it as, for us to look upon it as dignity in dying, rather than looking upon it as a self-harm. He's asking us to look upon it in the same way we would if someone euthanized themselves with stage 4 terminal cancer. He knew the end. He knew what the end would be like. He had spoken about his diagnosis. He knew exactly the path of that disease. He knew that, and he didn't want that for himself. He's saying the biggest regret he had was he kept that so silent from everybody, from those around him, from his loved ones, and so it was an awful shock, not just for his loved ones, but for the world, really, for his fans. But he couldn't see at the time. He was so depressed, so clinically depressed, so that he couldn't really see any other way out. Okay, so let's pull some tarot cards. I just had someone want to come through the room, but they can come through just another door, so hopefully they'll work that out. So let me just reconnect now and ask Robin Williams to bring through the messages, the most important messages that he thinks we need to hear. What is it that he wants to tell us? What are the most important messages for us to hear today? Glorious sunny day here in Australia, blue skies, the kind of day where you would like to get outside, be inspired, get up off the couch. All right, so what does he want us to know? What does he want us to hear? Robin Williams, what does he want us to know? He's saying that we are all absolutely wonderful. We are all super in every way. And he said he could actually go on and on and on. How long is a piece of string about how wonderful we are. And he said, often we don't stop to think about that, how wonderful we actually are. We are absolutely super, super wonderful. Okay. Right. What does he want us to hear? What messages does he want to bring through my dark black tarot? Okay. With the crows eating the carcass there. He thinks that's hilarious. Okay, I'll bring the laptop down and we'll see. Okay, so the first card out is the moon. Okay, the moon, and he's talking about the reflections of ourselves can often be found in, I guess, in the situations that we try and hide. So it's important to allow things to come up from the surface and so that we don't bury them down, 300 miles of ocean, so that they're never going to surface. It's important for us to chip away and keep chipping away. It doesn't matter how old we get. Keep chipping away at the things that we know we need to air and we know we need to clear. because ultimately they will lead in one way or another to a crisis of faith. So he's talking about suffering here and how to alleviate suffering. We've got the Wheel of Fortune, and this is always knowing that things will, I've spoken a lot about this the last few weeks, that life is going to be, you're going to have your times where it's going to be fantastic and you're going to have your times when it's challenging. But always knowing that things do pass and that things do move on. And it is how you deal with the weaknesses, how you deal with the lows, that really forges in a very meaningful way your strength and endurance. Okay, he's also talking about, he's reminding me again that his mind was going. And he couldn't be strong. The strongest thing he could do while he still had his mind was to do what he did. Okay. The Magician. Okay, so this is around actualizing things into reality. So knowing that all bad things, that all troubles do pass. And why do they pass? They pass because we want them to pass. So we've got here the moon at number 8. We've got the Wheel of Fortune, a completion of a cycle. And we've got the beginning, the Magician number 1, the start of a new cycle. He's also talking, and this is a little bit like the Chariot here. This is around things being out of control. The devil is probably one of the most mystifying cards to me in the tarot. It often comes forward as being something that is sort of unknowable in a way. The traditional meaning is greed, avarice. It can come forward to indicate addictions. It can come forward to indicate substance addictions, love addictions, things that aren't for our highest good. It can even come forward to indicate, this constant need to analyze. What is it? Analysis. Paralysis by analysis. It can even come forward as that. It can come forward as the Great Awakener. It can come forward as a sharp slap of a lesson. But it's underneath the Moon card. And that to me is telling me that the more that we bring things to the surface, the more we air them, the more we actually understand our strengths and our weaknesses and bring our weaknesses to the surface, and also our strengths as well. He said, don't get into the Pollyanna type of Sunday school, because that was another image that I got, someone hitting a triangle. So I'm not sure if he went to Sunday school when he was young, but he said, don't fall into those patterns either. You can bring your strengths to the surface just as much as what you can bring your weaknesses, and it's your choice. It's your choice, but you can't really bring your strengths to the surface if you don't understand what your weaknesses are. So it's a concurrent process, and people often forget. They'll either do one or the other, but it's actually concurrent. And if we understood how concurrent it actually is, we would have more control here. This is sometimes why the devil comes forward, the devil card. It's to understand strength and weakness concurrently. And really strength, weakness, power, disempowerment. So I'm getting a very strong message there. Thank you, Spirit. The crows, having to defend oneself. That's underneath the Wheel of Fortune. There's an upward energy. That's what I'm feeling with this card. There's an upward energy in defending oneself. It's again not just looking at the negative, but looking at the positiveness in standing your ground. And this is another reason why I got the phrase dignity in dying and euthanasia. There is this upward energy that he wants to create around the circumstances of his passing, and to ask us to think of it in another way. feel that's very important to him. And I'm getting the crow being the messenger here as well, which could be another reason why he wanted me to use this deck. Okay, the number one, the magician. Underneath it is the Two of Pentacles, and it coincidentally is the number two. The number two is collaborating with others, networking. This is the juggling of pentacles here, and this is making decisions. So he is saying, when you're in, and there is a strong mental health overlay in this reading, when you're in that I'm lying on the couch situation, another way to move forward is to rejoin your community. So I'm just going to keep going for another 3 cards here. Okay, so the Knight of Cups. This energy, this quick energy is very, very seductive. So I'm feeling that this column here is around reinforcing the messages that I've already brought forward in this reading. It's very, very alluring to be seduced by our weaknesses, but where I'm understanding that the strengths and weaknesses again are on 2 sides of the same coin. The Knight of Cups traditionally is talking about love, and so he's allowing me to feel the strength and the positivity of love, and so you can allow that to come forward in spades. He's telling me, allow it to come forward in spades. Okay. All right. Okay. Yeah, it's an upward it's an upward flow, not a downward flow. Okay. Defending oneself, the Empress, abundance. This is sometimes I see this card as having connections to the afterlife, and so for him, this upturn in energy, this things changing. He found that after he passed, he found a movement onwards in the afterlife, and this is again why he's telling me that what he did was absolutely the right thing to do. Okay, so that's a strong message in this reading for him in his situation. And I've had my battle with illness, and I have been at the bedside with my relatives as well, and I understand why some people support the concept of euthanasia. That instead of having 4 weeks or 2 months of suffering, 4 weeks of suffering, 3 weeks of suffering, 6 weeks of suffering, whatever the timeline is, that it's merciful. Euthanasia can be merciful. So there's a lot of stigma that we have to overturn in relation to euthanasia, dignity with dying. We have one state in Australia, Victoria, which has actually approved euthanasia with all the right caveats, with all the right, what is it called? Checks and balances. It's not for everybody, and for those that have a religious point of view to bring forward here, it is respected and acknowledged. But for him, there's a message here that he wants to get through. The Ace of Cups, juggling, the Magician card, and I'm going to the Knight of Cups as well. Strong emotions. Thoughts will often trigger strong emotions. But if you keep your thoughts strong, if you acknowledge your strengths, your weaknesses, if you love, not hate, it's as simple as that, you can generate the right kind of emotional environment for yourself. And at the base of this reading is the Four of Wands, which of course is celebrations, reunions with oneself, and reunions with his family too. I feel that this he has spent a lot of time looking after his family, parenting his children, being around for those that he loved, because these were the people he hurt the most with his silence, and with the way that he chose to leave this world. And we've got the Nine of Cups. So he's saying, when you look around, when you get up off that couch, when you start to be inspired, the Nine of Cups is about wishes, it's about miracles. And so he's saying, look for those, because it really is quite life affirming. Along this path that he ran when he was communicating, he saw a lot of miracles. He had no problem with opening himself up to spirit, and so he's just saying, believe in miracles, believe in miracles. Okay, then they can be found even in the darkest of places. All right, I'm going to leave that there. As I said, I was going to put this off because of that noise, but I felt it was there for a reason. For one of the things that he wanted to get across was not to be too hard on him for what he did, not to be too hard on him. And he said that is a message that goes with people that do what he did. And he is saying that they do what they do at that time for a reason. And he's saying not to forget the reason, not to let the way that things happen to overshadow the reason. Okay, I'm going to leave it there. I hope that you, I don't know if you enjoyed that channeling, but I hope that it has resonance for you in some way. And I'm just going to close down now. Okay, I'm getting the thumbs up here. We're done. We're finished. And I'm getting the, I don't know whether it's a crow or it's a dove. It doesn't really matter. I'm getting the bird ascending now. Okay. All right, I'll leave that there. Thank you for tuning in.